A lot of our recent guests have been people who currently own turtles and tortoises, or they want to get a turtle and tortoise, and they want to get ideas on outdoor enclosures for their animals. So it's pretty hard to keep even your Redfoot tortoises indoors year round because of the space requirements they need. So I'm going to do a walkthrough of this area. In this area currently we have our 3 Redfoot tortoise. We have 2 males, 1 female. And this weekend we're potentially getting 2 more surrenders that are going to end up in here if they're big enough to end up living with these larger ones. So I'm gonna walk through while these guys are eating and show you some of the house ideas. A lot of these ideas, we travel to other facilities and get the ideas, or it's something that pops in my head. With the Redfoot tortoises, we have a couple trees, we have banana trees, and we like to have quite a bit of shade areas. So Redfoot tortoises spend a lot of time in the wild. They'll be in grasslands with really tall grass where they're shaded a lot. Or they'll even be in the rainforest to where there's not a lot of light reaching the forest floor. So they like a lot of shade. So I'm gonna do a walkthrough throughout here, show you some of their houses, their drinking pond, and just give you kind of an idea if you currently have a tortoise that you wanna build a new enclosure for it outside. So when I first walk in, this house right here is, I just call it a concrete bunker, but it is made out of, you can see the cinder blocks with concrete poured in it. And then I did like a homemade stucco. I don't do stucco, but it's like a homemade stucco, and it's lasted, you know, 3-4 years, so it's doing pretty good. The good thing about these, they stay really, really cool during the heat of the day, and the tortoises spend a lot of times in there. We also have the shade cloth over this one because it doesn't have a tree or anything in front of it to kind of keep the sun off of it. So this is the one that Luigi, he spends a lot of his time in. So our tortoises, they're kind of particular. They're gonna pick their own areas that they wanna spend time in. But he spends most of the time in this concrete bunker itself. Right outside of it is a large ornamental grass. This one gets relatively big, and the tortoises actually spend a lot of time. Sometimes they'll even sleep in these little nooks right here. You can even see where there's no grass growing because they kind of wallow down in there, and they spend a lot of time in there. So walking over here, we got the 3 amigos. We've got Mario, that is Drake, and then this is Luigi right here. Right over here we have a live oak. This will give them a lot of shade over time. You know, it's just a good sized shade tree. I have some of these, they're kind of ugly, but they're, you know, different types of ornamental grasses I've got on sale at Lowe's and nurseries over the years. And they don't look great, but they love to kind of get up in these little areas like this. We'll see them over here a lot. And then there's this little trench right here that they've wallowed out, and they spend a lot of time in here. I see Mario in here quite a bit. At night, they're not always sleeping in their house. A lot of times, especially during the hot days and the warmer nights, I will actually find them, like this morning, none of them were in their houses. They were all pushed up into the ornamental grasses, which is what they would do in the wild to stay away from predators, but also, you know, kind of feel a little more secure while they're sleeping. We do have a cactus growing here that I have a cage around, but I've seen Mario taking some chunks, sticking his neck through and taking some chunks out of it, but that middle one's still doing all right. These cactuses are great. They can handle the cool weather relatively good. Once they grow a little bit bigger, I can break them off as they're still growing and feed them to the tortoises. We come over here. This is the bald cypress. So this bald cypress is going to give a lot of shade. It's still on the smaller side. It's about, I think we've had it in the ground about 3 years. It was about the size of my pinky around, and now it's a pretty decent sized tree. After just about 3 years, I keep it really wet. We got some Spanish moss growing on it, and these are great shade trees. They don't take a lot of space on the bottom, but they give a lot of canopy over time. I do have little sticks and stuff. A lot of the Redfoot seem to scratch their shells a lot. So you'll see them walking around. You'll see them rubbing up on things, rubbing back and forth over logs, on the side of logs. They really love to scratch their shells. So these rocks, these logs, and then some of these pink grasses in the fall, they'll shoot out these pink blooms, and they're actually really pretty. But some of it's for looks. A lot of it is actually practical for the tortoises, little areas to kind of walk over and scratch on. This right here is a fig tree we planted last year, and it was dead to the ground this spring, and it's, I don't know, it's about 4.5 feet tall now. These grow really, really quick. It's already got figs growing all over it. I'm not really sure if these will ripen this year, But this is a great tree because the canopy and then the way fig trees, they shoot up a lot of shoots, and it'll be a good spot for the tortoise to be able to stay cool during the day, hide, get out of the sun, and then when the sun starts setting or early in the morning, they can start walking around again. But since redfoots can handle a little more fruit, once that fruit drops, if we don't get a hold of it first, or if the birds don't get a hold of it, when it drops, they'll have a little bit of a fruit source, a natural fruit source for them to actually kind of start eating on. Over here is, I just call it the mulch pile. I throw a lot of leaves as long as it doesn't have like from other exhibits and stuff like that to cross-contaminate with other tortoises. And we'll just throw stuff in here, sticks. And I see Mario, once again, he's the one that I always see going under these little branches and stuff and scratching his shell. And he'll spend quite a bit of time over here digging around. I'm not sure what he's doing, but he loves the taller grass that's over here. And he has a little burrow area right here. Usually it's full of mud, especially when we do a water change in their pond, and he'll wallow down it and just cover himself with mud. Over here we have their little drinking pond, and they spend a decent amount of time in here. I wouldn't say they swim or soak very often, but almost daily I see them coming over here, dipping their head in the water and taking a sip of water. This is a very simple pond. I just use a push brush to kind of push the water out when I'm wanting to clean it. But it's it does its job. I really enjoy this little pond. I ended up cheaping out. I always tell myself, don't go cheap at the beginning. I cheaped out and bought one of the really cheap little pond liners from, I don't know, Lowe's or Home Depot. And it's already kind of got a leak. I don't know where. So what I'm gonna do is get one of the Aquascape, either the leftovers we have if it's big enough, and replace it so we don't have that little leaking issue. It's not a lot, you know, a couple gallons a day, but we refill it we clean it about 2, sometimes 3 times, especially when it's hot, a week. So it's not a huge issue. It's just something I want to make sure it's not leaking underneath it. But this is their little drinking pond. Oh, there's a little skink. There he goes. So we also have, that's supposed to be a clumping bamboo. So it's not a bamboo that'll actually run. It'll stay in a clump. Starting to think it's not clumping bamboo. We'll see by next spring. This is one of the banana plants we have in here. They actually love it. Sometimes I'll even rip these off and feed it to them, or I'll rip off a leaf, set it on the ground when I'm feeding them, so they're not eating directly on the ground. This is such a large enclosure, it's not as big of an issue, but if it was a smaller enclosure, it's nice to have them eating on top of a plate or even like a bowl that's on the bottom to keep them from eating. They do spend a lot of time in here, so a lot of the time when I do feed them over here, I like to put something down for them before they start eating. But I see some of them sleeping in here a lot. Drake spends a lot of time right here. It stays really cool under these banana leaves, like a multiple degree difference when you're standing under here. There's a little breeze. She spends a lot of time in here. This is the tortoise scratching post. They get under this and they'll just scratch back and forth, back and forth. Then this house is one of our original house. This is actually Bowser's original home back in the day. And this is built the same way. This was probably 5 years ago that I built this. Besides having to restain the outside to keep the color pretty, which isn't necessary if you just want a place for your turtles and tortoises to go, this thing stays super, super cool, especially with the banana plants behind me. And then this is a laurel oak. So the laurel oak has really shot up and it keeps this area shaded. This area right here, they spend a lot of time in the shaded area. So they spend a good amount of time inside of this little house, and it's usually Mario and Drake. They spend the most time together. They pick their area that they like, and they're kind of creatures of habit. You're going to see the same ones waking up the same time every day. You're going to see the same ones in the same area kind of eating. And with this amount of space, this amount of visual barriers, which is extremely important for turtles and tortoises, it keeps their stress down, keeps the males from harassing the female. I've seen on 2 occasions, and yesterday was one of them, where Mario was mounting on Drake, and then yesterday I was doing a tour, a private open, and I actually saw Luigi mounting on her right over there. So it's not a huge issue. It's just if it becomes, they start pestering her too much, I'll have to separate them. But having this large enclosure, I believe it's about 3,000 square feet. I've measured it on Google Earth. They have quite a bit of space. So they spend a lot of time during the day sitting right here, walking around right here, grazing on this grass, the weeds and stuff that are growing. Anytime a new banana shoot pops up, usually they bite it down. If I want a new shoot to grow, I can actually just put a little cage around it till it's big enough for them not to take chunks out of it, and then we'll have a brand new shoot shooting up. So this tree has a lot of Spanish moss on it. This one's a little more for decoration, but it does give a lot of shade on the outside. This one I let fill out a lot more. It keeps the turkey enclosure a little cooler in the evenings, but I just keep this one shaded so I can have a lot of those little pups, which is what those baby bananas are, shooting up and keep growing. So once these produce bananas in the fall, they will not come back the next year. So these will be my big stalks the next year. So I let a lot of these grow. This is another spot that they spend quite a bit of time. And then here is our bigger cactus plant. So sometimes they'll be able to climb up on the rocks and take little chunks out of it, but this one's growing really, really well. We had a big chunk fall off during a storm, broke it off. But this is a hardy plant. Some of those that actually fall are going to turn into brand new cactus. And it's just a food source. The baby tortoises actually absolutely love them. They do have little small little hair spikes. They're not the big spikes. As they're growing, they have the big spikes and then they fall off, but they can't hurt you. The little hairs can be kind of aggravating. So what I do when I'm feeding them, I'm sure it wouldn't matter, but I actually just burn it real quick with a lighter or a torch and get all those hairs off, and then I'll cut it to pieces or just throw it in whole, and they kind of munch down on it. It gives them good water, especially in the summer, but it's a nice little treat for the tortoises. So this is our Redfoot enclosure, our Redfoot exhibit. Obviously, if you're wanting to build something at home, it doesn't have to be this big, this elaborate. This is just big because we have people come visit and see the turtles and tortoises. But some people like to make their enclosures look really, really nice. This is, I'd say, about a year in as far as being established from all the plants. So give it another year or two, and a lot of these plants will be much, much larger. The grass plants especially take, a full season before they really take hold. And it'll give the turtles and the tortoises a lot of space to move around. They have a lot of different options to chew on things and browse on things, and they do very, very well out in this area. So this is the Redfoot enclosure. And that's about it. So if you want to visit and see these enclosures in person, you can visit us throughout the summer months. We're open Thursday through Saturday. Right now, 8:30 to 12. The reason for that is due to the heat. Once it gets really hot, all of the tortoises, especially the turtles, they swim around all day. The tortoises, they go find their shaded spot, and it's very, very difficult to do it. That's why we do our private tours and private opens, because it's a lot easier with a small group of people to be able to walk through and actually bring the tortoises out or go where the tortoises are, so we don't have to bother them and force them to come out and, tempt them with food during the heat of the day. So